Anuragji is not here. And thanks a lot, Resham and Business World, for giving me the opportunity to be the moderator for the panel. And I would like to take you through all the panelists here. Anyways, the names are there. We have not sitting like, in the photograph, as it has been shown there. But Varun, and he is already, it said, Salad Days. It's 11-year-old company and pioneer in selling salads. And then Dave is into, Alt Mobility is the company name, and completely EV related things he is doing. So he'll talk about his business. And then we have Amol, Ankit. Ankit in Zyod and his manufacturing in clothing industry he belongs to. So we'll listen to him about his businesses and what he think about the topic. And then we have Amol from nutraceuticals. So his company name is Physiovits, right? And I am Priyanka Sachdeva. I run a company called Core and Pure into Essential Oils. And the topic what has been given to us today is unicorns. All of us have been hearing, but it is Indicorn. So any idea what is Indicorn? In the viewers? Okay. So Indicorn first, unicorn definitely we have heard of, the companies who are doing $1 billion, they are into unicorns. And now the new terminology, we have framed, and that's by Kunal Behel, it has been framed recently, Indicorns, and probably that's the right thing what he talked about. Like, jo companies 100 crores ka turnover kar rahe hain, we will talk about them only in spite of, talking about the unicorns. And the valuations are only making them unicorns and not the actual reality. So the topic as it says, the era of Indicorns is scaling Gazelles for market dominance. So let's hear from, all the panelists. First of all, I would like to understand from them, because we have seen recently many unicorns. Let's talk about Paytm, let's talk about, Byju's. We have many other, like Swiggy also, are doing good, but then again, the valuations are taking, it's degraded. So now we need to understand why actually it is happening and what all the steps the ecosystem has to take in this. And from your experiences, our experiences, we can discuss and make it a little easier and clear how the startup ecosystem has to go ahead, so that in spite of only 2%, the data says out of 100% of entrepreneurs or the startup, only 2% are successful in the business. 98% are failure, and we hear only about those 2%, right? And what about the 98% whom we are not hearing, and whom you are hearing in 2% are also, creating these kind of news, as we are talking about Byju's and, Paytm Mall and all, the degrading the valuation. So Varun, first of all, yours is a business. When I was going through your profile, I saw, and I was talking to you, you are the one who has never, it's more of valuation when we talk about it is like for, bringing in money to raise the company, from one level to another. We look upon for that because definitely, money is the fuel to run the business. So I would like to understand from your perspective, how do you take this, era, and how do you see that we founders have to step in further?
Hi. So I have been running Salad Days since 11 years now, and we are a bootstrapped company. That's what you were referring to. Every founder has a different personality, has a different, way of building a company. When I started 11 years ago, actually, we had to create this category in a way. We were saying salads are full meals, right? So we were slightly ahead of the pull in the main Indian diet, right? I mean the mainstream diet. So I wanted to build a company which was fundamentally strong in terms of profitability, scalability, etc. I always want to build a company which is sustainable in its growth and in its existence. I personally believe that bottom line or profits are the goals, and top line is a means to reach there. We were, of course, I've seen in these 11 years how the funding environment, the ecosystem has gone up and down, and how the sentiments have changed, how different verticals have gained attention at times and how others have lost. There were, of course, a lot of avenues where we could go ahead and raise funds. But honestly, during that time, I felt that I should not be focusing on hypergrowth in the business that I was building, because that may not be as sustainable if I do that. Money solves a lot of problems. Money does not solve all the problems. So we chose to sort of stick to doing things slow and steady, and I think we have scaled up decently. I'm not against funding. It's not that investment is a bad thing or anything like. It depends what you're building, which business you are in, what's the kind of growth trajectory that you can actually have. But I believe that sustainable growth is something that should always be prioritized. Otherwise, to me as a founder, it's not a business which is nicely built.
So thanks a lot. So we have to, otherwise, we business schools, we talk about growth or, profitability, right? That is somehow, or in some of the workshops you see that whether growth or we talk about profitability. So most of the founders, we say growth in spite of profitability. And here he is talking about profitability, and probably, that has to be the key. So now coming to you, Dev, because he is a bootstrapped, and you are in the industry with investors and in the ecosystem. So how do you take that, whether what steps we the people, the businesses who are looking to be the actual big size or taking dominant place in the industry, how we should approach to the funding or the working style and all this. What is your say on that?
Sure. So just to give you context, we're essentially at Alt Mobility building a platform for leasing of electric vehicles for commercial fleets. The problem we are trying to solve is for access to finance. So it's investment, and raising capital is like a daily job for us, because we're essentially solving for the hardware problem related to climate change, which is that you have all these new technologies coming up, and somebody has to bear the capital cost of the transition, whether it's solar assets, whether it's electric vehicles. There's a lot of capital that needs to be put in for these technologies to scale up. And so the business we are building is essentially focused on reducing that capital cost and absorbing that capital burden. So a lot of our work is actually, I am, focused on raising equity. So a lot of my discussions have been over the last 3 years we've been deploying. We've deployed about 8,000 vehicles on the ground. That translates to somewhere about kind of 160 crores in assets under management. And so the journey for us has always been, how do we raise both debt and equity? And so our conversations, when we started 3 years ago with investors, were really around, largely speaking to impact funds, largely speaking to infrastructure-related investors, but also venture capital. And throughout my conversations with about 130 plus investors, what we realized was that investors are certainly looking for companies which are sustainable. There's a clear change in narrative wherein there's a strong focus on profitability. We've all been speaking about it. But there's also a clear view, a much more clearer view of what the end goal of that company should look like. In the EV sector where we are in, there are incumbents that are already in place. So when you look at the fundamental transformation of the automobile sector, you're essentially placing, a new OEM that is building an electric vehicle is always being pegged against an incumbent, which is, let's say, a Bajaj. When you're creating a play in the financing space, you're always being pegged against a Shriram Transport or a Bajaj Finance again. So there are always values that new players need to create to be able to justify their existence. Really, the fundamental question that anyone is being asked in this sector is really, How is your business going to look like 3 to 5 years down the line? And what differentiation or what value are you going to be able to create to take a place amongst the top market share holders on that table? So that's one of the fundamental conversations that we have when we are speaking with investors in this sector. So the goal is really, what are you going to look like 5 years down the line? What is going to be your position in the niche segment where you're innovating in? And then how are you building that sustainably? What are your North Star metrics that allow you to essentially become more sustainable in terms of your growth and create that trajectory? Now, a lot of that profitability may not come in the initial years, because you're really focusing not just on product market fit, you're focusing on being unit economics positive. So focusing on both of these aspects is quite important. Scale is something that really kicks in once you've been able to establish these two metrics. And I think that's the trajectory that we have followed. We've been profitable from the first year onwards, and we continue to show profitability every year since we've grown in. And we've been able to demonstrate growth at the same time. So there's a significant balance that we've been able to create between high growth and maintaining profitability. That's been kind of how our trajectory and experience has been.
So definitely, it's not only the growth in terms of, because by client acquisition is very important, which only will bring in growth. So definitely you are looking at that thing, because as I told you, I was going through your last post, and I saw that you were trying to, grab the bigger market, and, number of fleets, you are trying to add on, and which will definitely, have the costing incurred to it. Costing would be involved in it, but definitely the profitability you have kept in mind. So it's not that only the valuation part per se we have to look upon for, but profitability we are making in place, right? So that's how. And in your kind of an industry, definitely it's not that one car, it has to be number of cars. So if it is coming, also one company is coming, big number will be coming in. So that will make the profitability more, viable, right? Great. So now coming to you, Ankit. So normally when we have seen traditionally, big companies are always from manufacturing background, and you are in manufacturing, right? The recent trend talks about, tech and all, and then we see that they have taken leaps and bounds and in terms of growth. But traditionally, if we see all companies who had made a place, they were from manufacturing. And then if I come to you, how you are seeing, because in manufacturing, in one day, you cannot be giant, right? So how you are taking it that for profitability, sustainability, what are the measures you suggest in your company you have taken and for the industry per se?
Thanks, Priyanka. I think just to give all of the audiences the context, Zyod is a tech-enabled apparel manufacturing company. So we supply to fashion brands, and help them the overall end-to-end design to delivery supply chain. So we focus a lot on manufacturing. And as you rightly mentioned, see, it's not a one-day job. It's a traditional old industry requiring a lot of hard work, and that requires a long-term strategy, which I think Varun, they rightly mentioned, that you have to have that sustainability in mind, that long-term goal, what you are solving for, and that becomes the cornerstone. So you have to figure out that this is the actual value that you would be creating by your solution. What is the change in the life of the consumers, the customers, or the ecosystem before and after your company? And that what becomes the real driver of creating such a company, where once you're solving the real pain point. So in our situation, where the fashion industry evolved from a consumer lens, where e-commerce was rising, Gen Zs were moving towards this fast fashion consumer behavior, it required a lot of agility in the supply chain. And for that, there was one starking number that we realized that most of the brands, they fail because of inventory losses. And that inventory loss is primarily because the supply chain is not agile or fit for this 21st century. So that's where the technology angle comes in picture, where you figure out what are the inefficiencies in the supply chain and how technology can solve it, make it fast, make it more agile supply chain where you reduce your order quantities. Gone are those days where there were just like 2 seasons, summer, winter. Now you have spring, summer, pre-summer, fall, and the list can go on. So now you have to build that efficient supply chain which is rapid to the changing consumer trends. And once you identify that one cornerstone of your business, you start working on it, and that then creates that long-term value, which eventually will provide that growth, that scale, because you have repeat consumers, customers coming in, as well as that would then actually reflect in your bottom line P&L numbers, and that's where the value is. And just one last thing to sum it all up, see, markets are always cyclical. When there is low interest rate, just during the COVID times, it was a booming market. When now the interest rates were rising, the markets became, or we saw a funding crunch. But if you are building a very strong, sustainable, fundamental company, you are always in a good market.
Great, great. So, the three industry perspective we have heard, and now coming to your industry, pharma industry is one, pharma and arms and ammunition are one, which actually regulates the economy all across the world. So now coming to your industry, you are into nutraceuticals. So because this is capital intensive, right? Nutraceuticals, if you want to scale up, will take a huge amount to, but definitely, yes, the big giants are doing it. So in your kind of industry, how do you see that, for sustainable growth, the startups should look upon for, or the Gazelles should look upon for?
So first of all, to just give you a context, so I come from a healthcare background. And so I come with like almost 15 years of my experience handling patient cases, efficacy or efficiency of medications, patient safety. So that's what basically triggered, venturing into this, venturing specifically into this Physiovits, this domain. So to put into perspective, we have 3 different domains: healthcare, wellness, and then skincare. Now, talking about nutraceuticals, one thing that is really important here is, to get the background done. So like you said, there's a regulatory framework in place, and then you have a lot of research to do. So specifically, if I talk about the COVID times, so before COVID, the awareness was like quite limited. After COVID, there has been a lot of awareness. Talking about numbers, nutraceutical industry was supposed to be, 27 billion by 2027 or 28. So we've already crossed that numbers in 2022, which makes it a very lucrative kind of a domain right now. So it's easy to get attracted, jump in with the perspective that, there's a, I would say, it's almost like a success ride where everyone, is trying to hop onto. But very specifically, it's not that easy. You need to have that kind of research, that kind of information. The regulatory framework itself takes like almost 1 or 2 years. You come up with an idea, then you have to come up with the research, then you have to come up with the effects and possibly any adverse events or whatever is possibly the factors that impact. And then after a couple of years, you can actually come up with a product. So this entire thing takes a lot of time. Now, especially, we are talking about the funding and the bootstrap. So yes, we are bootstrapped, and we've gone through this grinding and this churning as well. 21, we started with almost 20 products, and that in itself, mind you, it was a research of almost 3 years. So we took like 3 years to get into it. Then we came up with almost 20 products, and we had to scale it back down to 8 because it didn't work. With that extensive research, with that extensive everything coming in, and the COVID, it didn't work. So we came down to 8, and then we scaled up to 12. So lessons learned, yes, scaling cannot be hasty, scaling cannot be rushed. for any case, if you want, scale up to a certain level, specifically healthcare, where lives are at stake, where patient lives matter, it cannot be a rushed growth. It has to take time. It has to be sustainable, and then very important thing is trust. So most of the times when we talk about consumers, specifically in nutraceuticals, it's a very common kind of a feedback or a review that the consumers don't feel that the specific nutraceutical products are actually helping them out. So noticeable changes or noticeable benefits, that's a really difficult thing to crack, especially when it comes to the consumer base. So that's where we basically come in. So just to give you a context, so like I said, I'm a clinical pharmacist, and we have a team of doctors and pharmacists, that's me, and a panel of think tank, which are like, majorly into healthcare, the doctors, the pharmacists, the nurses, the dietitians, and then, an entire panel. So what becomes important here is, I'll give you an example. So the clinical doses in terms of nutraceuticals, that play a very important role. The kind of dose that you have to take, which will actually help it absorb in the blood, is really something that will take time. And nutraceuticals is more of, deficiencies of the body. So for the current diet that we have, the current lifestyle that we have, most of the time, specifically, so this is an interesting observation. So in tier 2 and tier 1 cities, we find the deficiencies are higher. Rather than the rural people, or rather than the people who are still grounded to the roots, we see the deficiencies are higher because of probably the lifestyle, because of probably the quality of food that we take. We're more into processed foods, we're more into different kind of diets, and adulteration is a problem that is that has a very limited control. So that's where these kind of benefits, these kind of deficiencies kick in. So it's really important to study the kind of, the cohort of population that we are going to address. And that definitely changes with the time, with the geography.
Different industry perspective we have seen, and, people, like how you people are doing it. Now, I would like to understand, because ultimately it has to be self-sustainable growth. That is what we need to look upon for. And in different kind of industry, as he was talking about, and I can understand because I am in this industry, and people are actually not aware about the concerns what they have, or in any business, that is the problem. People are, because if EV, because let's say, the entire industry is talking about, government is talking about, so people have become aware about EV lena hai, or like, pollution ko control karna hai, or, environment ko theek karna hai, and all this stuff. But then again, the cost is very, very high. And big giants are also coming in. Big players are also there, and as you said that you will be, talked about in comparison to that of Bajaj and, Shriram Finance and all those. So I would like to understand, how do you see, what are the pitfalls as in mid-size status? How do you find out the, this question, because, I have talked about EV basically. So what are the pitfalls you see, so that, let's say, the thing what the investor is asking for 5 years, and if we have to keep it in mind and we want to overachieve it, or whatever the numbers we are looking at, we need to do that and need to be faster than the competitor or the big giant coming in and grabbing the entire market. What all you have taken as a step to recognize those things, and you are planning to?
From our perspective, when we look at enabling access to finance, we see that traditional finance, vanilla finance as it exists for the automotive segments, has the potential to be disrupted, because electric vehicles are smarter and more connected vehicles. They allow you access to data that comes from within the battery packs and the vehicles. We essentially have built a company which is very data-centric. So we collect data across the entire life cycle of our fleets, from its purchase to its ongoing running, the cell voltage, current, temperature coming from the battery pack, to every single spare part that's changed in the vehicle, to every single charging session that happens within our fleet. And what we've built is a stack that is built on top of a conventional vanilla kind of leasing or financing stack to create a life cycle management play, in which we own the entire, user journey or the vehicle journey and manage the entire life cycle of that vehicle, which through data and how we're able to optimize that entire experience for the user. For example, if a vehicle is going out and going to access a charging station, the market rate you would pay is about 20 rupees. You have a very difficult charging experience. What we're trying to do is essentially integrate that within a single application so that you can access charging point operator X or Y through a single unified app, and you get, let's say, a 30-40% discount on the charging session. We work on reducing the servicing cost for the user. The cost for servicing is built into the leads, for example. So objective for us is not just to look at it from just a simple financing play. We look at it as a life cycle management play, where we reduce the total cost of ownership of the vehicle to create more value for end users. And that's what really differentiates us from any conventional combustion engine vehicle player that exists in the market today. Looking at data, how we're able to leverage that to create more efficiencies. EVs are already more efficient, require less servicing. But on top of that, how we leverage data to integrate the entire ecosystem in a single experience is really what we're striving to build.
Great. So data is the most important factor you are talking about, right? Now, Varun, coming to your industry, charging point, he talked about 20 rupees and stuff like that. When we say your industry is easy to enter, when we talk about there is no entry barrier is very low. When you say that, and when we are talking about data, that the customers who have come in the arena, already in your company, they have used salads from your company, they have tasted it. But then again, discounting we see a lot. Zomato gives sometimes, this discount, and then Swiggy gives you this discount, and then different players the local players are giving other discounts and all this stuff. So in this kind of a variant market, how do you see that, what all steps you can take? Because here the numbers can be huge, but in food it can be even higher than whatever the numbers are there, because everyone has to eat. So how challenging it is to grab the customers and retain the customers, because if the LTV is more, then only you are going to sustain, because it is not one time thing. So how do you see in that case?
Yeah, so I would also relate my answer to the entire context of this discussion, right? I think, yeah, you've mentioned the right thing. In food industry, where the transactions are so many and the average order value is low, and with the mindset that we have been discussing, wherein customer acquisition and top line and valuations were always a priority, discounting has been extremely rampant and invasive, right? What I mean to say is that, sad but true, in such less involving purchase decisions like ordering food, most people, and I'm generalizing, most people would do a trial if the discount is there or if the discount is higher. Now that's the fabric of how the purchase decision making is evolving in our country, with exactly the same priorities that we were discussing, right? I mean, the priority is valuation, priority is top line, bottom line is not the priority. Then you would not care if you're making losses. You would just go ahead and give a lot of discounts and have, just have your customer acquisition costs that are being looked into, and then you're getting in a lot of customers. Yes, that is one of the main incumbents and one of the main predicaments in this case. How do you fight it out? That's your question, right? Salad Days, for example, is not a very discount-oriented company. I do not think that, be it any product or be it any industry, discount can be a growth strategy. Discount should not be a sales strategy. It should be used wisely. It can be an incentivizing strategy. You can get your first-time trials in with discounts, especially now I'm talking with my industry. For example, we do not give discounts to repeat customers. Maybe short-term top line can suffer because of that. We may not get as quick growth, a quarterly growth, initially in initial years, right? But tell me, at the end of the day, would people like to buy bad quality food at discounts? A lot of people would not, right? You might incentivize them for first time trials, but after that, consistency and quality of product as well as service, that really matters. And in food industry, consistency is the largest challenge. Making one profitable shop or a cafe or an outlet or a cloud kitchen versus scaling it up into a chain, into a brand, in remote locations across country, etc. That's a completely different ballgame. Why? Because we are operationally extremely intensive in nature. So I believe that discounts probably should be used as incentivizing strategy and not as sales or growth strategy. They should be used for generating first time trials. And after that, it is what you are serving and how you are serving. That is what ultimately matters.
Great. So consistency is the key, right? Just Ankit, I think we have to finish also. So just, what is your take on this one? Just consistency we are talking about discounting. In the fashion industry is, as you said, that not season, even 15 days, it's changing, right? So how do you take it in your industry, and what all to retain the customer or to acquire the customer you see for the scalability, what you will do?
I think what common points that came out was customer centricity, giving that quality, as well as having that whole life cycle management. So I'll keep it quick given that the time
So
is
just
up.
2 liners, it's a time up. So lifestyle and quality.
So I think one key takeaway from all these points becomes keep that customer centricity at the bottom of it in each of the industries, and that's how you will sort of help scale businesses into a more profitable, sustainable, growing empire.
Great. Just a liner from you.
So I'd like to add to this when you talk about retention and customer acquisition and growth. So one thing that is that actually works within the healthcare space is more about community building. So for example, we came up with different initiatives like the Girl Circle. That's one of our initiatives. So that specifically answers, that's not a sales pitch or a sales initiative. That's basically to address the questions that females can have with respect to their female health specifically. Similarly, we have another initiative called Doctors on Air, wherein there are a number of blogs, and then we've come up with the videos and the podcasts as well.
So awareness, basically, you are talking about that is what the
awareness
awareness
and
what you are
engagement,
talking.
I would
Engagement
say.
and
When
awareness we're talking
people,
about.
when people start building that kind of trust, and they understand that, yes, the problems are being addressed, they're being heard, they're being listened to. So that basically creates more of a cohesive experience for them.
Thank you. So what I can make out from the discussion of these panelists is not the valuation game, the building game we have to play, and it is those who will build will only last, I believe, right? It's not about the valuation. If we are playing the valuation game, trust you me, as an entrepreneur, 5 of us sitting here and everyone sitting in the room knows that we are not going to sustain for a long time. So building has to be the important character of the business. And if you talk about the barter system when there was in the country, then also it was only building, and still today, and I believe whatever the future generation will come, if they will talk about building the business, then only they will be sustainable, otherwise it is not possible. So in terms of Indicorns, back to the basics, जो हमारे इंडिया के धरातल और हमारी जो बेसिक्स बात करते हैं कि ग्राउंडेड रहो और अपने चीज़ों को मत भूलो. Focus on the reality, and being the genuinity of the business is the most important key thing, what I could make out from that, and that is how you will grow. That's what I have taken up from this panel discussion. Thanks a lot, everybody, for giving your time, and thanks a lot, everybody, for being a wonderful audience. Thank you.